right, good afternoon and welcome to our latest series of Literacy PD on the Fly. We have building fluency in reading today. So what is fluency? Fluency is the ability to read text with speed, accuracy, and proper expression. Fluent readers recognize words automatically and group words quickly to help them gain meaning from what they read. They use phrasing and emphasis in a way that makes it sound as if they were talking rather than reading. As readers become more fluent and begin to recognize words automatically, they can focus more attention on what the text actually means. They start to make connections between what they're reading and their background knowledge, and start to use other comprehension strategies. Less fluent readers are so busy focusing on figuring out the words that they have little attention left for understanding the text. Although reading fluency doesn't ensure comprehension, comprehension is difficult without fluency. Fluency is critical for comprehension. So, it's important for us to strategically teach our kids how to do this and how to support them when fluency is breaking down. Now, we often talk about norms in oral reading, and there are a variety of tables that show where kids should be at the beginning of the year, in the mid-year, and at the end of the year. So we need to keep in mind that when you have a student who is a struggling reader, especially in fluency, we want to make sure that we look at what's their actual reading level. So if there's a student who's in grade 6, but they only have a reading level of, say, grade 4, we would try to keep the targets in the grade 4 reading level range. Now, that being said, those are just reference points. So we don't want to make them be the firm targets for our students. You will know whether fluency is breaking down or whether they're improving in fluency. So, what are the skills necessary to improve fluency? Well, we need to have, again, phonemic awareness, that ability to hear, identify, and manipulate sounds and words. They need to have good decoding skills. This is linking letters and groups of letters to sounds and words, such as phonics, chunking, clusters, word families. As well, a really important skill that is needed for fluency is vocabulary. That is word knowledge. The more you know about a word, the faster you can read it. So let me give you an example. When we look at the word jam, many students may know jam might refer to the jelly jam that we put on toast. They might understand that jam could refer to a traffic jam where you're stuck in traffic. You might also think about the word, my finger got stuck in the jam or got jammed in the door. There's also when we add endings on. If they were jamming out, you might think of the music. So the child who knows that the same words can be used in multiple ways, depending on the context, is already bringing more knowledge to what they read, and this will translate into more speed and thus more fluency and comprehension in reading. It's all in knowing what goes into a word. So how can we increase fluency? Obviously, read, read, read. Students need to be doing a lot of reading. If you take a look at this graphic, it shows a student A who reads 20 minutes each day. That translates into 3,600 minutes in a school year. When we look at that student, by the end of grade 6, they will have read the equivalent of 60 whole school days. It will give them exposure to over 1,800,000 words. Student B, who only reads 5 minutes a day, the exposure is only 282,000 words. And student C, if they were only reading 1 minute each day, is only being exposed to 8,000 words. So What that means is the more a student reads, the more exposure he or she has to words. The reading increases sight words, decoding skills, fluency, and vocabulary. Now, it's important to know what students should be reading. So we often talk about independent level books in relation to instructional level. We want kids to read at an independent level. This increases their accuracy and speed at which they're reading. Independent level text is the text where they can decode 95% or more of the words. Their accuracy and speed increases when they read at this level. Students should be taught how to select books at a just right independent level. So we often talk about the 5-finger rule, where when they're looking at a book, if they read one page, if they have 4 to 5 fingers, usually 5 fingers, we say that book is too hard. So if they come up with 5 words that they don't know, the book is too hard. So there's also too easy. So usually they need, 2 to 3 words on a page that they don't understand. That would be a just right book. One important thing to remember when we're talking about getting kids to read at an independent level is that they need to have choice. I know it's harder for younger ones. They often need a little bit more guidance, but kids who are in about grade 3 for sure should be able to be taught how to choose just right books. They want to have their choice, so giving them lots of selection, making sure they have access to classroom libraries or choosing to use the library as often as possible is really beneficial. Reading aloud is powerful. Reading aloud exposes kids to high quality texts. It will increase their vocabulary development. It allows them to hear fluent readers, the modeling from the person who's reading. And it will increase their interest in reading. Reading aloud is the thing that's going to make them love reading forever. So this should be happening throughout all grades. I know in older grades, teachers feel they don't have the time, but even the tiniest amount of time is going to make be beneficial to all students. This is especially important to ELL students to hear the rich language, the vocabulary, the discussion that happens around books that are read aloud in class. All right, so one of the important things that we need to talk about is how to increase decoding skills and how to increase sight words. Now, sight words are all those words that kids know automatically. When kids have fast, effortless word recognition, it's known as automaticity, and it comes with a great deal of reading practice. Most readers develop automaticity for large numbers of words by the time they're around 8 or 9 years old, but the number of words we can process automatically continues to grow throughout our life. So when we look at decoding skills, we often talk about clusters. So if we can increase the automaticity for clusters, those are the tiny little pieces of words that students are able to decode. If we get them to automatically recognize these, like ite and f and ing and n, they are going to be able to decode a word like frightening that much faster. When we have sight words, when those are read frequently, either in text or through flashcards or games or activities, this will increase the sight words going into their long-term memory. So words like said, people, or among, where they can't find always the clusters that are going to make those sounds, then they're especially important to be practiced for sight words. So students need exposure to clusters and sight words between 4 and 14 times to automatize the recognition. So when one of the activities that you can do is speed drills. So we can use this for spelling patterns, for clusters, and for high frequency words. So basically you have a little chart or a pattern, a strip, and kids are just reading them. So one example is here. This is a speed drill for spelling patterns or clusters. So in this, students would read all of the 37 clusters and record the time it took them. This is repeated a number of times daily or even weekly to get those into their long-term memory. When we look at sight words, another activity that's really helpful is called rapid word recognition. So in rapid word recognition, you would have a chart with a grid on it. The 6 words are then placed randomly on each row of the grid. Students then have 1 minute to read the words on the grid from top to bottom across the chart. If they get through all the words, they would start again at the top. At the end of 1 minute, they count and record the number of words correct. So you can see an example here. So they would set their timer, start it for 1 minute, and say, answer, through, could, great, again, though, through, great, answer, though, again, could, though, again, through, great, answer, and so on. Now these words, often you want to put words that are either very irregular or maybe words that are tricky. Like for this example, through and though, kids often don't pay attention to what makes those words unique. And so this activity would make them pay attention to that. Another activity that increases fluency is repeated reading. There are a number of graphs that can be used for repeated reading. This example here shows a first, second, third, fourth, and fifth reading. Now, what happens is you would have a selection of text that is at the independent level of the student, and they would be reading for 1 minute. So they read for the 1 minute, and at the end of the 1 minute, you would go over the errors that they had and give them immediate and corrective feedback. So you would go over the words that they missed, and then they would read again. And then you could record on the chart how many words per minute. And again, for words per minute is if they read 45 words, but they made 5 errors, then the words correct per minute would be 40. Another way of using that repeated reading is with a self-evaluation to increase fluency. So you'll see in lots of classrooms that have access to iPads or maybe Chromebooks, they might have a station or an activity that the student does where they record their fluency. So again, they would be using their, not necessarily text on the iPad, but maybe a book or their independent reading book, and they would record themselves. At the end of the recording, they would listen to it, and they might have to give themselves an evaluation on how they did for accuracy, rate, expression, punctuation, and then they re-record the selection, the same thing from the start. And then they would re-record themselves and try to make a difference to the area that they felt they needed to work on.